Participios pasados, lecciones de gramática 14.3 y 15.1. In this video lesson, I'm going to cover two separate grammar concepts that are very closely related. They both have to do with past participles. First, we're going to talk about how past participles can be used as adjectives, and then we'll talk about how past participles are used in the present perfect tense with the verb haber. You may have noticed as you've been studying the Spanish language that there are a lot of adjectives that really closely resemble some verbs. Take a look at the examples in this chart. The adjective apagado, which means that something is off, looks a lot like the verb apagar, to turn off. Cerrado, which means closed, looks a lot like the verb cerrar, to close. Olvidado, forgotten, looks a lot like olvidar, to forget. Preferido, preferred, looks like preferir, to prefer. Usado, used, looks like the verb usar, to use. These particular adjectives in this box are actually past participles that can be used as adjectives. So let's talk a little bit more about what a past participle is and how you make them out of verbs. Then we'll use some of them as adjectives. I have three examples here we're going to be working with. We have the verb cerrar, which is an AR verb meaning to close, esconder, which is an ER verb meaning to hide, and divertirse, which is an IR verb meaning to have fun, and it also happens to be a reflexive verb. Now, the first thing we're going to do to change these verbs into past participles is we're going to take the ending off of the infinitive verb. This should look familiar to you as you've done this many times when you've conjugated verbs to match different subjects. This time, instead of having to remember 6 different endings, you only have to remember one ending. For AR verbs, the ending will be ADO or ADO. For ER and IR verbs, the new ending for the past participle is going to be IDO, spelled I-D-O. So your new words would be cerrado, closed, escondido, hidden, and divertido, fun. If you're wanting to use these these past participles as adjectives, you must change the ending to match the noun that they're modifying in number and gender, just like any other adjective you've ever used. Here's an example of the past participle cerrado and how I've changed the ending to as because las puertas is plural and feminine. So that makes my complete sentence. Las puertas están cerradas. The doors are closed. I can do the same with the verb esconder. My past participle would be escondido, but if I want to use that as an adjective to modify something feminine, like la llave, the key, then I would have to change the O to an A. La llave está escondida. Las fiestas son divertidas. The parties are fun. I changed divertido to divertidas to match las fiestas. This should look familiar to you, and hopefully this isn't anything new or surprising to you. Now it's your turn to practice turning some verbs into past participles. I want you to try this with the AR verbs hablar, bailar, and dibujar. The ER verbs comer, prometer, and vender. And then I also want you to try with the IR verbs decidir, dividir, and omitir. You should have space on your handout to go ahead and do this transformation of changing these verbs into past participles. So please pause the video now while you do that. Okay, now that you have your list of past participles, let's check and see how you did. You should have hablado for spoken, bailado for danced, dibujado for drawn, comido for eaten, prometido for promised, vendido for sold, decidido for decided, dividido for divided, omitido for omitted or left out. Now we're going to talk about the present perfect tense. This is used to express that someone has done something. In Spanish, we form the present perfect tense by using the present tense of the auxiliary verb haber and a past participle. Now, an auxiliary verb, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, is basically just a verb that's used in order to form different tenses, moods, or voices of other verbs. These are the 6 conjugations of the verb haber that you'll need to know. So if I say yo he and then I use a past participle with it, it means I have done whatever that past participle is that I'm using. So the to form would be has, the él, ella, usted form is ha, nosotros, hemos, vosotros habéis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes, han. Let's look at some practical examples. He cerrado la puerta. I have closed the door. ¿Has olvidado hacer tu tarea? Have you forgotten to do your homework? Ella no ha cambiado la ropa. She hasn't changed her clothes. Ya hemos practicado mucho. We have already practiced a lot. ¿Habéis preparado la cena? Have you prepared the dinner? ¿Ustedes han regresado? Have you or you guys returned? Now, if you're using a reflexive verb and changing that into a past participle, you still have to include your reflexive pronoun. As with other verb conjugations that you've used, it needs to go before your conjugated verb. So in this case, it's going to go before the form of haber that you're using. ¿Te has bañado? Have you bathed or have you taken a bath? Ella se ha cepillado los dientes ya. She has already brushed her teeth. Now, there's a couple of words in here that are good for you to know, as they tend to come up a lot when you're using the present perfect tense. One of those is ya, the word for already. As you'll notice, it's fairly common to put it at the beginning of a sentence, but it can also be thrown on to the end of a sentence. In both of these examples, I could have used it at the beginning or the end. So I could say, ya hemos practicado mucho, or hemos practicado mucho ya. Same with the second example, I could have moved ya to the beginning to indicate that she has already brushed her teeth. Also, you'll want to notice that when you're trying to indicate that something has not happened and you're using the word no, it needs to go in front of the verb haber. You'll never separate the verb haber in the past participle, so always remember that. If you're using a pronoun of any type, whether it's a reflexive pronoun, direct object pronoun, indirect object pronoun, or the word no, any of those will need to go before the conjugated verb haber. Another common word that you'll often see used in the present perfect tense would be the word for still or yet, and that's todavía. And kind of like ya, it's somewhat flexible in where you put it in your sentence. So I can say, ella no ha cambiado la ropa todavía. She hasn't changed her clothes yet. I could put the word todavía at the beginning of the sentence. I could put it after ella, but before the word no. So it's kind of flexible, but that's a common word that you should be familiar with, as you will hear people use it a lot, and you'll probably want to use it yourself as well. As with any other kind of tense that you've learned in Spanish, there are a few irregulars that we need to talk about. The first type of irregular past participles you'll encounter are those verbs that have back-to-back vowels. Now you'll remember we learned the rule about an I to a Y between vowels. This is going to be that same group of verbs, but the rule this time is simply that you need to put an accent over the I in your past participle. So to say fallen, like I have fallen, yo me he caído. Or I have believed, he creído. I have read, he leído. I have heard, he oído. I have laughed, he reído. I have smiled, he sonreído. I have brought, he traído. The next group of irregular past participles don't really follow any kind of a pattern, so you'll just need to memorize these. Abrir, if you want to put that into the past participle form to say opened, it's abierto. Now we can use cubrir and change it into cubierto for covered. The same pattern applies for descubrir. If I want to say discovered, I would say descubierto. Said or told would be dicho. Described is descrito. Written, escrito. Made or done, hecho. Died, muerto. Put, placed or set, puesto. Resolved, resuelto. Broken, roto. Seen, visto. Returned, vuelto or devuelto if you're saying that you have returned something. Okay, that concludes this lesson. Hopefully I don't have you too confused. If so, don't worry, we will be practicing this more in class and going over a lot more examples to make sure you feel comfortable using past participles both as adjectives and in the present perfect tense.